Seoul and Washington have made public their building blocks to future partnership on trade and security. And the joint document has in writing South Korea's plan to build nuclear-powered submarines. We have more on Press Perspective today. Hello, hope your work week is off to a good start. It's Monday, November 17th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. We start our panel session this week with a look at the joint document disclosed recently that details trade and security discussions between Seoul and Washington. For more on this, I have Fabian Kretschmer with German press agency here in the studio. Fabian, welcome back.
Nice to be here.
I also have Professor Lim Eunjung at Kongju National University joining the session virtually. Professor Im, it's lovely to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Fabian, let's start here in the studio. So do walk us through some of the details of the joint document with the focus perhaps on the defense partnership between Seoul and Washington.
Yeah, that's a tough question because the document was quite comprehensive and media here have described the document also as an upgrade to the alliance between US and South Korea, a modernization of the alliance, and there are quite a new set of changes, and I will name, I hope, all the most important ones. I think one point that is really important is that South Korea now has been granted permission by the US to operate and build nuclear-powered submarines. I think we will soon hear more about that in detail, but of course, just to give you a brief overview, that is a touchy issue because nuclear technology can be used in a civil way, can also be used in a military way, and basically it's only a matter of how strong you enrich uranium, and that already makes quite a big of difference. So there has been a lot of negotiations already for a long time. Now South Korea could secure that. That is quite a big win for South Korea. The second point I want to mention is that South Korea agreed to increase its defense spending actually to a level of 3.5% of its GDP as soon as possible. That's the exact wording, and that is quite a big win for the US because, you know, the Trump government is obsessed about those numbers. They want to have their allies to increase their defense spending, shoulder more responsibilities from their perspective, and I believe that South Korea is the first US ally that is a non-NATO member who actually fulfills such a high target of 3.5%. We don't know yet what South Korea will label as defense spending because it's kind of a broad term. You can, you know, put a lot of things under defense spending. Maybe some, it's a broad field, so to say. We have to see the details. Maybe the third aspect and the last one is the transition of wartime operational control, short OPCON. I think for viewers in South Korea, they are a little bit familiar with that, but I think outside of South Korea, that might be a little bit of a strange issue. But to give you a short answer, the operational, if there's a war here on the Korean Peninsula, then there's a chain of command, and right now, basically the US forces, they have the final say for many things. Of course, South Korea has a strong interest to get the operational control in when there's a serious case, when there's a war case. And also a touchy issue, especially since last year, since the martial law case, because the military leadership was, you know, involved to some degree with implementing this martial law. So there's of course the question of trust or not. But overall, both sides agreed now that the OPCON will be transferred to the South Korean side. We don't know exactly when, but I think both sides want to implement that under Lee Jae-myung's term.
Right. Professor Im, Seoul, as Fabian mentioned, has garnered Washington's blessing, if you will, for the building of nuclear-powered submarines. What makes this support significant for the alliance and for regional security?
Well, first of all, I'm a little hesitant to call it just blessing. But however, I got your point, again, to your questions at point. So I'm going to answer to that question. Of course, the so-called nuclear power submarine, which has been a long kind of, again, the dream for the South Korean government, regardless of its partisanship from the progressive side or from the conservative side, both again have been eager to have again the nuclear power submarine. Again, as we all know, South Korea has a very strong, robust shipbuilding industry. We are making very good, very powerful submarines. The thing is fewer issue, because even though South Korea has also very strong nuclear industry for the civilian purpose, for peaceful purpose, which is again the electricity generation. However, at the same time, South Korea has been very loyal to the principle of so-called non-proliferation. So we have been very, again, sincere with the NPT, like a global nuclear non-proliferation regime, or we have been following the IAEA's guideline. Having said that, again, we absolutely we can't have again the nuclear, this enrichment, so-called enrichment facility on our land, and we don't have the right to do the reprocessing for the back-end fuel cycle as well. So we don't have both. Again, the front-end enrichment, back-end is reprocessing. We don't do that. However, in order to operate again the so-called nuclear power submarine, this fuel, which is going to be put into the reactor, the small reactor in the submarine, that will be the powering the submarine. That fuel is different from the fuel we are using for just civilian purpose, so-called again the electricity generation. So we need to have some different approach to again to fill this fuel for the nuclear power submarine. That was why basically President Lee Jae-myung was trying to persuade again the President Trump. Having had again the conversation between the two presidents, again the President Lee and the President Trump, when President Trump was in South Korea, we got this again the agreement. However, still of course we don't see any specific details yet within the document, within the fact sheet. So long way to go. It's going to be a very long way to go where we're going to build the submarine, and then what exactly the fuel type going to be, and how we supply the fuel for the nuclear power submarine from U.S. or up to what extent the U.S. can again share the technology and so on. So there are so many blanks. However, still, as long as we agreed on the direction, I think we need to be pretty much encouraged again with this new policy direction agreement. I appreciate it. At the end of the day, again, it's a good for the national security, and I also do think it can contribute to the regional security as well in terms of again the balancing balance of the power.
Mm-hmm. Right then, a step in the positive direction then. Fabian, in the meantime, what has been the response from South Korea's neighbors to its nuclear submarine ambitions? Perhaps we can start with the concern shared by the Chinese ambassador here in South Korea, Dai Bing, last week, I believe, during a very rare press conference.
Yeah, that was a rare press conference, quite an interesting press conference. So Dai Bing, the Chinese ambassador here in Seoul, he's concerned that those nuclear-powered submarines might be used might be directed at China, and I think to some degree his concerns are justified. I mean, just recently the U.S. Chief of Naval Operations said that it is hoped that with the new capability, with the new technology, South Korea will actually help to, I think, deter China. I forgot the exact wording, but it was kind of clear what he meant. And I think even President Lee Jae-myung once briefly said that, those nuclear-powered submarines can be used to track not only North Korean vessels, but also Chinese vessels. Then later the statement was clarified that this was more like a general statement. But yeah, of course, to some degree, when Dai Bing, the Chinese ambassador, says that we hope that, there will not be a strategic direction shift within the U.S.-South Korea alliance, And if this will happen, then actually our position, meaning the Chinese position, might also change. When he says that, then he's basically voicing a subtle, or actually not so subtle, threat. What they mean is that, for them, and that Taiping even mentioned that, it is hoped that Korea will, or South Korea and US will not play fire over Taiwan. That's the big issue for China. But let me give you just a little bit of context, because it's also interesting what Taiping did not mention. He did not say that China right now, or the Chinese military, the People's Liberation Army, is the single army that has the most rapid nuclear modernization. I mean, of course, the most nuclear warheads, the two countries are the US and Russia. But number 3 is China, and they are rapidly increasing their nuclear warheads. Why? I mean, officially, the Chinese government does not give any explanation, but that is quite concerning, and that also changes the power balance. So I think that could be also seen why South Korea wants those nuclear-powered submarines, because the neighboring countries are also getting stronger. I think that's kind of a vicious cycle. So, but the Chinese side was really cherry-picking and only mentioning the information points that they want to get across.
Right, and staying with this, Professor, should the South Korean government be worried about these words by China's top diplomat here? And if so, how should Seoul seek to navigate the rivalry between Beijing and Washington, do you think?
Well, that is why I was a little hesitant to call it again a blessing, because it can be a double-edged sword, even though we need a stronger deterrence capability, and we also need to have enough, again, the capability to, again, the deter, and at the same time to monitor what's going on even under the sea, because this so-called undersea security issue has been growing, and it will be growing more important. For example, if you think about the cable, again, I'm in Kongju, and you guys are in Seoul, and we are connected now through this, internet. But any those kind of, again, the data, information we exchange simultaneously, all these things are basically transfer through the cable, physical cable. So those kind of, if you think about the international exchange of information through the cable, again, the cables are underneath the sea, and then this cable security or safety of the cable is crucial. I can't emphasize really enough again, the importance of the security safety of the this cable networks, or maritime security overall. Again, the Korea, even though South Korea is a part of the Eurasian continent, we are physically, geographically attached to the Eurasian continent. However, this is a de facto island country because of the disconnection between the north and south. So what I'm trying to say is South Korea is really a kind of de facto island country, which means without shipping, without, again, the transportation through the sea, or even without the communication under the sea, again, this country gonna be really, really in a trouble. So all this, again, the safety of those physical safety of the rear infrastructure or transportation is crucial, significant for these countries, again, the sake. So having said that, again, the nuclear power submarine, it does have, of course, speed, faster speed, and then it does have a stronger capacity to travel around, the long distance, again, in the longer period of time. So we need that kind of, again, the capability to protect ourselves. That does not necessarily mean that, again, that we are assuming, again, China as our kind of, common enemy. So we need to probably differentiate, I think, those kind of things. Again, the concerns, of course, are still there from Chinese side, but we are doing this, and we want this, and we need this for more like a general general, how would you say, the dimension, more comprehensive dimension of the South Korea's, again, the national security. So I think, again, we really need to persuade the neighboring country with a more diplomatically well-spoken languages. I think articulation will be probably necessary to soothe their anxiety, because we also need to be, we need to understand our neighboring countries' concerns as well.
Right. Fabian, speaking within your capacity as a journalist from Germany, what does South Korea's future fleet of nuclear-powered submarines mean for Europe, do you think?
Well, I think that's not directly a European issue, so Europe has bigger problems to deal with right now, but I can give you a broad overview. I mean, Europe is committed to non-proliferation, so I think there would be a slight concern that now that South Korea has nuclear-powered submarines, and there are also growing voices within the Korean society to call for their own nuclear weapon program for security reasons, for defense reasons, that maybe now the box of Pandora has been opened, or it could be a next step to advance this agenda. So this could be a concern, but it's a small concern. It's not a big concern. Another concern could be that Europe wants stability in the region, and actually to have the power balance harmonious, or to have a power balance, maybe those nuclear-powered submarines can actually help. So that would actually speak for Europe supporting the nuclear-powered submarine. It's not really very clear. Then you also have economic interests of other countries in Germany, in Europe, who also build submarines. They maybe see some new competition rising. So it's a really a big mixture of interests, and you cannot draw like a very clear conclusion whether Europe is supporting it or is against it. I think it's a highly ambiguous position that Europe has.
Right. Professor, moving forward, President Lee Jae-myung has embarked on a 10-day four-nation tour that starts in the UAE, followed by Egypt, then South Africa for the G20 summit, and finally Turkey. First then, what do you believe is the importance of South Korea's interactions with the UAE, keeping in mind, of course, the current climate of geopolitics?
Sure. UAE is a very, very, very special country for the South Korea. As we all know, South Korea was able to successfully, again, export our nuclear reactor for, again, the civilian purpose, again, to UAE. And not only just those, nuclear power plant, but also we have been pretty much successful to sell export our those so-called weapon system to the UAE, because UAE is one of the top Middle East country who spent pretty extensive amount of money for its national defense, and we don't have really conflicting views on the national security between, again, the UAE and South Korea. So we can be more mutually cooperative and complementary. So in that sense, absolutely, relationship with the UAE is important. And at the same time, I also want to appreciate the meaning of President Lee Jae-myung's visit to other nations, including, as you just explained, as Egypt or South Africa or Turkey, because we live in this era. Again, as Fabian already mentioned, again, Europe, of course, has a bigger problem because, again, the Russian-Ukraine war never, again, stops. And it's going to be full 4 year, I mean, within the 3 months, if they can really stop until the end of February next year. So it's a long, long war, and it's really difficult to find the exit from both sides. And having had that war, again, we have a U.S.-China strategic rivalry too, which is about the so-called technological hegemony. They are competing for the future technology. So this competition is another like a long, long competition. So having had these two, again, it is really difficult to make existing multilateral mechanism vibrant dynamic and energetic. However, we saw again the very successful multilateral meeting here in this country in Kongju a few weeks ago. So we need to again to revive, restore that spirit, again the multilateral talk, dialogue and cooperative atmosphere. We need to again restore that, because South Korea again, this is an island country de facto, and at the same time this is a trading country. So without very cooperative relationship with the rest of the world, this country cannot be surviving. And we do have again definitely have some capability to help so-called global South country develop further in a healthier way, in a more constructive way. So I think definitely we need to enhance our cooperative relationship with so-called global South countries. So in that sense, I really want to appreciate the specific, again, President Lee Jae-myung's tour to these four different countries in Africa and Middle East.
Right, of course. And keeping in mind Professor Im's point about the importance of multilateral meetings, Fabian, President Lee Jae-myung is expected to attend the G20 summit in South Africa, as I mentioned earlier. The leaders of the US, Russia, and China will be absent from this particular meeting. What has the foreign media been saying about this reality, as well as its broader implications, keeping in mind, of course, that this is the first time that the G20 is being held in the African continent?
And it's also the first time that all three leaders of Russia, China, and the US are absent. The US will be completely absent, actually. They don't send any representative. Why? They accuse the South Korean, sorry for the slip of tongue, the South African government of slaughtering white farmers or so, but they didn't deliver any evidence. I would say this is a conspiracy theory, so I mean, in my point of view, and it is also kind of surreal because the US will be the country that hosts the next G20 summit, but nobody will dare to basically assume the role. I mean, the handover will be basically will be a strange ceremony because no one from the US will be there. We know that Xi Jinping, he doesn't like to travel abroad, so he will send the Prime Minister. I think that's also some kind of power play, that he only flies to foreign countries when it's really something important from the Chinese agenda, and he prefers that others, leader of states, will come to Beijing. We know that also Russia, I mean, basically all those three countries do not want a strong multilateral system. And I think that's what's the broader implication, that multilateralism is on decline. And those meetings like the G20 summit, they risk that they become some symbolic photo op, handshake meeting, but that not really much substantial issues can be discussed. Well, if the most important or the most powerful countries are absent or only send their second row, then of course it weakens those meetings, and that's quite concerning. And I hope that maybe in the future it will change. But I mean, right now under Trump, Putin, and Xi, I don't see this trend reversed.
Right, but that particular meeting will take place this weekend, of course, the 22nd and 23rd of this month. We'll see what happens once it opens in South Africa. Fabian, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Professor Im, all the way in Kongju, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
All right, that ends our talk for today. As always, thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.